Ambassador Victoria Kane adjusted her formal navy blue uniform as she walked through the crystalline corridors of the Galactic Assembly's main station. The walls pulsed with soft purple light, and the air hummed with the energy of 1,000 different technologies. After 8 grueling months of negotiations, today would determine Earth's place in the galaxy. Her aide, Director Thomas Blake, matched her steady pace. His weathered face showed the strain of countless sleepless nights preparing for these talks. "The preliminary reports aren't encouraging," he whispered. "Intelligence suggests they're planning another rejection." Victoria nodded grimly. She had expected this, but hope had kept her going. Earth had spent decades preparing for this moment, the chance to join the galactic community as equals. They had demonstrated their technological progress, their cultural achievements, and their commitment to peace. Yet the Assembly seemed determined to treat humanity as children. The great chamber opened before them, a massive dome filled with floating platforms where representatives from 47 different species sat in judgment. The architecture was designed to intimidate, with Earth's small delegation seated far below the others, forced to look up at their would-be judges. High Chancellor Vextar of the Zephyrian Collective called the session to order. His translator converted his multi-toned speech into flat, emotionless English. "The Assembly recognizes the Terran delegation. We have reviewed your species application for membership status." Victoria rose from her seat, projecting confidence despite the hostile atmosphere. "Thank you, High Chancellor. Earth stands ready to contribute to galactic peace and prosperity." A series of clicks and hisses echoed through the chamber. Alien laughter. Councillor Threxna of the Morvani Empire leaned forward on her platform, her 6 arms gesturing dismissively. "Contribute? Your species has existed in space for barely 2 centuries. Our youngest member worlds have millennia of experience. Experience that could benefit from fresh perspectives," Victoria replied calmly. "Human innovation has already solved problems that have plagued the galaxy for generations. Our medical advances, our engineering solutions." "Your weapons technology," interrupted General Korath of the Hegemony Defense Force. His scarred face twisted into what might have been a sneer. "We've seen your military capabilities. Impressive for primitives, but dangerous in the wrong hands." Victoria felt her jaw tighten. "If you've studied our history, you know that humans have learned from our mistakes. We've united our world and ended armed conflicts between nations." "Temporarily," Vextar intoned. "Your species' violent nature is well documented. The Assembly cannot risk galactic stability by admitting an unpredictable element." Thomas leaned close to Victoria's ear. "They're not even considering our proposal. Seriously, this is theater." She nodded slightly, then addressed the chamber again. "What would it take for Earth to prove its worthiness? We've met every requirement, exceeded every standard you've set." The alien representatives exchanged glances and whispered among themselves in dozens of different languages. Finally, Vextar spoke again. "The Assembly has reached a decision. Humanity may join the galactic community under the following conditions." Victoria straightened, hoping against hope that reason had prevailed. "Earth will surrender all military vessels to Assembly control," Vextar continued. "Human colonies will be governed by appointed Assembly administrators. Terran technological development will be supervised by our scientists. These measures will remain in effect for 500 of your years, at which point we will reassess your species' progress." The chamber fell silent. Victoria stared at the High Chancellor, certain she had misheard. 500 years of occupation? Guidance? Threxna corrected with obvious satisfaction. "Your species clearly cannot be trusted with independence. This is our generous offer of gradual integration." Thomas grabbed Victoria's arm, his face flushed with anger. "This is an insult, not an offer. They want to turn us into slaves." Victoria looked around the chamber at the alien faces watching her with mixture of amusement and condescension. These beings had ruled the galaxy for millennia, growing fat and complacent on their power. They saw humanity not as potential partners, but as a threat to be controlled. Something crystallized in her mind at that moment. Earth had spent decades trying to join this club of cosmic bullies, believing that cooperation was the only path. forward. But looking at their smug faces, Victoria realized that some bridges were meant to be burned. She stood slowly, her voice carrying clearly through the vast chamber. High Chancellor Vexitar, members of the Galactic Assembly, I thank you for your generous offer. The sarcasm in her voice was unmistakable. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably on their platforms. However, Victoria continued, Earth must respectfully decline. We came here seeking partnership, not submission. If the Assembly cannot accept humanity as equals, then we will find our own path among the stars. The chamber erupted in shocked whispers and electronic chirps. No species had ever rejected Assembly membership. The very idea was unthinkable. Vextar's translator crackled with static, reflecting his agitation. Ambassador Kane, you cannot be serious. No world survives alone in the galaxy. Without Assembly protection and trade agreements, Earth will face economic collapse and military threats. Victoria smiled coldly. We survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars without your help. I think we'll manage. She gathered her documents and nodded to Thomas. This delegation is concluded. Earth wishes the Assembly well in its future endeavors. As they walked toward the exit, Victoria heard Korath's voice boom behind them. You'll regret this decision, human. The galaxy is not kind to those who stand alone. Victoria paused at the chamber's threshold and looked back one final time. General, we've been standing alone for our entire existence. It's made us strong. Perhaps it's time the galaxy learned what that means. The doors sealed behind them with a finality that echoed through both their hearts and the history of human civilization. Captain Marcus Reed watched the stars blur past, through the viewport of the Shadow's Edge. 3 months had passed since Ambassador Kane walked out of the Galactic Assembly, and Earth's response had been swift and decisive. Instead of crawling back to beg for mercy, humanity had chosen a different path entirely. Captain, we're approaching the Kepler Trade Corridor, announced Lieutenant Jessica Park from her navigation station. Long-range sensors detect a convoy of Altarian merchant vessels under attack. Marcus nodded, his weathered hands steady on the command console. The Shadow's Edge was one of Earth's new stealth frigates, invisible to conventional sensors, and armed with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Battle stations. Let's show these pirates what humans are made of. The crew moved with practiced efficiency. Chief Engineer Roberto Santos powered up the plasma cannons while Communications Officer Lynn Foster monitored distress signals from the merchant ships. Through the tactical display, Marcus could see 3 Vorthan raider ships circling their prey like vultures. The Vorthans are demanding cargo and passengers, Lynn reported. The merchants are defenseless. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The Vorthans were known throughout the galaxy for their brutality. They sold captured civilians into slavery and destroyed ships for sport. The Galactic Assembly knew about their activities, but did nothing beyond issuing worthless condemnation statements. Drop stealth mode, Marcus ordered. Target the raiders, weapon systems only. We're not here to start a war. The Shadow's Edge materialized from empty space like a ghost becoming solid. The Vorthan ships immediately turned toward this new threat, their communications channels crackling with confusion and anger. Unknown vessel, identify yourself, growled the lead Vorthan captain. You interfere with legitimate salvage operations. Marcus opened a channel, his voice cold as space itself. This is Captain Marcus Reed of the Terran Navy. You have 30 seconds to withdraw from this sector before we consider you hostile. Harsh laughter echoed through the communication system. Terran? The primitives who were rejected by the Assembly? Your pathetic world has no authority here. 29 seconds. Marcus replied calmly. The Vorthan ships opened fire, their energy weapons striking the Shadow's Edge's shields. The human vessel barely shuddered under the assault. In response, Marcus nodded to Santos, who unleashed a beaster, precisely targeted barrage. The battle lasted less than 2 minutes. Earth's plasma cannons, developed in secret research facilities, cut through Vorthon shields like paper. One raider ship lost all weapons and drifted helplessly. Another suffered engine failure and began spinning out of control. The third vessel, seeing the overwhelming power difference, fled at maximum speed. "Incredible," whispered Jessica. "Our weapons are decades ahead of theirs." Marcus opened a channel to the Altarian merchant convoy. The alien captain's face appeared on screen, his large compound eyes wide with amazement. The Altarians looked like bipedal insects with iridescent chitin covering their bodies. We thank you, Captain Reed," the merchant captain stammered. "But why did you help us? Humans have no treaties with the Altarian Republic." "We don't need treaties to do what's right," Marcus replied simply. "Are your ships and crew unharmed?" "Yes, thanks to your intervention. But I must ask, how did you find us? No assembly vessels patrol this sector." Marcus smiled slightly. "Let's just say Earth has decided to make its own way in the galaxy. Safe travels, Captain." As the Shadow's Edge re-engaged its stealth systems and disappeared from sensors, Marcus knew this encounter would be talked about throughout the trade networks. Word would spread that humans were protecting merchant vessels in sectors the Assembly had abandoned. Over the following weeks, similar incidents occurred across the galaxy. The destroyer Iron Will under Captain Angela Torres rescued colonists from a failing terraforming station. The cruiser Defiant Star, commanded by Captain Chen Liu, broke up a slave trading operation in the Outer Rim. Each time, human ships appeared from nowhere, solved problems the Assembly ignored, then vanished again. Back on Earth, President David Morgan reviewed reports in his office overlooking the lights of Geneva. Defense Secretary Patricia Wells sat across from his desk, her expression mixing satisfaction with concern. "The strategy is working perfectly," Patricia reported. "Our ships have conducted 47 successful interventions in the past month. Not a single human casualty, and we've earned the gratitude of dozens of worlds." President Morgan nodded, thoughtfully. "And the Assembly's response?" "Confused anger, mostly. They're demanding explanations from worlds that publicly thank us. Several member species are asking why Assembly forces weren't available to help when they needed it." The president stood and walked to his window, looking out at the city below. "They thought rejecting us would end the matter. Instead, we're showing the galaxy what real leadership looks like." Patricia leaned forward. "There's more, sir. Intelligence reports suggest 3 Assembly member worlds are considering withdrawal. They want to establish direct relations with Earth instead." For the first time in months, Morgan allowed himself a small smile. Ambassador Kane was right. Sometimes walking away from the table is the strongest move you can make. Meanwhile, in the Galactic Assembly chambers, emergency sessions were becoming daily occurrences. High Chancellor Vextar paced across his private office while his advisors delivered increasingly troubling reports. "The humans have established trade agreements with 17 non-member worlds," reported Intelligence Director Kethva. "They're offering better terms than standard Assembly contracts." Counselor Threxna's 6 arms gestured frantically. "This is impossible. How can primitives compete with our established trade networks?" "Because they're not primitives," admitted General Korath reluctantly. "Our intelligence was flawed. Human technology in several areas exceeds our own capabilities." Vextar stopped pacing, his alien features twisted with something resembling worry. "What do you recommend?" "We could try diplomatic overtures," suggested Kethva. "Perhaps renegotiate the terms of membership." "Absolutely not," Threxna shrieked. "We cannot show weakness by crawling to them after they rejected us." General Korath studied a tactical display showing human ship movements. "Then we have a problem. Because at this rate they won't need us at all. And more concerning, other worlds are starting to think they don't need us either." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. For the first time in millennia, the Galactic Assembly's absolute authority was being questioned, and it was all because they had underestimated a species they considered beneath their notice. The galaxy was beginning to regret their dismissal of humanity, though none would admit it yet. Dr. James Crawford wiped sweat from his forehead as he descended deeper into the ancient structure buried beneath Titan's frozen surface. The discovery had been accidental. A routine mining operation had broken through into what appeared to be ruins older than human civilization itself. "Careful with that scanner, Dr. Patel," James called to his colleague. These symbols are unlike anything in the galactic database. Dr. Nina Patel nodded, her breath visible in the cold air despite their environmental suits. The energy readings are off the charts. Whatever powered this place is still active after millions of years. Their team of 12 scientists had been working in shifts for 2 weeks, carefully excavating and documenting everything they found. The structure was massive, extending kilometers beneath Titan's surface. Most shocking of all, it appeared to be a research facility far more advanced than anything the Galactic Assembly possessed. "Dr. Crawford," called out archaeologist Kevin Walsh from deeper in the complex, "you need to see this immediately." James and Nina hurried through corridors, lined with strange crystalline panels that still pulsed with faint light. They found Kevin standing before a wall covered in holographic projections, showing star maps, mathematical equations, and what looked like blueprints for incredible technologies. "The translation program has been working on these symbols for hours," Kevin explained excitedly. "They're not random alien markings, they're instructions, manufacturing specifications for faster-than-light drives that could cross the galaxy in days instead of months." Nina gasped as she studied the projections. These energy calculations, if they're accurate, this technology could power entire star systems with a device the size of a briefcase. James felt his heart racing. "Are you certain about the translations?" "Positive. And there's more." Kevin touched a control panel, and new holographic displays appeared. Weapons technology, medical advances, terraforming equipment, all beyond anything the galaxy has ever seen. Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's xenoarchaeologist, emerged from another chamber carrying a small crystalline device. "I found this in what appears to be a command center. When I touched it, it activated and began downloading information directly into my tablet." She showed them her screen, which now displayed schematics that made their current technology look primitive. According to this, the beings who built this place called themselves the Architects. They left the galaxy millions of years ago, but not before hiding research stations like this throughout unexplored regions. James realized the implications immediately. They wanted someone to find this, someone curious enough to explore beyond the established boundaries. "Someone like humans," Nina whispered. Back on Earth, President Morgan convened an emergency meeting of his closest advisors. The secure conference room buzzed with excitement and apprehension as Dr. Crawford delivered his report via secure transmission from Titan. "The technological applications are staggering," James explained through the holographic display. "With these architect blueprints, we could build ships faster than anything in the galaxy. Our energy production could increase 1,000-fold. We could terraform dead worlds in years instead of centuries." Defense Secretary Wells leaned forward. "Military applications? Defensive systems that could protect entire planets. Shield, technology that makes our current defenses look like paper. But also weapons of incredible power, though the architects seemed focused on protection rather than aggression." President Morgan studied the data scrolling across his screen. "How long to implement these technologies? Some of the simpler applications could be ready within months. The more complex systems might take years to fully understand and manufacture." The room fell silent as everyone absorbed the magnitude of the discovery. Finally, Morgan spoke. "This changes everything. The Assembly rejected us because they thought we were primitives. Soon we'll have technology that makes them look primitive." Meanwhile, in the Assembly chambers, panic was setting in. Emergency session after emergency session had failed to address the growing human influence in the galaxy. Worse still, intelligence. Reports were painting an increasingly disturbing picture. High Chancellor Vextar stood before the full assembly, his usual composure cracking. "The situation has deteriorated beyond our worst projections. Human vessels now operate freely in 47 sectors. They have established formal alliances with 23 worlds, including 2 former assembly members." Angry chittering and electronic protests filled the chamber. Councillor Threxna's voice rose above the din. "How is this possible? They are one primitive world." General Korath activated a tactical display showing human ship movements across the galaxy. Our latest intelligence suggests Earth's fleet numbers in the thousands. Vessels we've never seen before, using technologies our scientists cannot identify. Impossible, sputtered Trade Minister Zeklon of the Centaurian Commerce Guild. No, world can build such a fleet in mere months. Yet the evidence is undeniable, Korath continued grimly. 3 days ago, a single human destroyer disabled an entire hegemony battle group that was threatening a neutral world. The engagement lasted less than 10 minutes. The chamber erupted in shocked silence. The hegemony battle groups were considered among the most powerful military forces in the galaxy. Intelligence Director Kethva stepped forward with even more disturbing news. We've also detected unusual energy signatures from the Sol system. Massive construction projects appear to be underway. Our long-range sensors indicate they're building something enormous in the asteroid belt. Vextar felt a chill run through his alien physiology. Shipyards? Unknown. Whatever it is, it's larger than our biggest space stations and generating power readings we can't explain. In another part of the galaxy, Merchant Captain Veltar of the Rigel Trading Consortium was having the best year of his career. Ever since establishing a trade agreement with Earth, his profits had tripled. Human goods were in high demand throughout the galaxy. Their electronics were more reliable, their medicines more effective, and their manufactured products superior to anything the assembly worlds produced. More importantly, human patrol ships kept the trade routes safe. Pirates and raiders had learned to avoid sectors where Earth vessels operated. The joke throughout the merchant networks was that it was safer to travel with a human escort than an entire assembly fleet. Veltar recorded his daily log while his ship traveled through previously dangerous territory. Personal note. Received. Another request from Assembly Trade Commission demanding details of human commercial agreements. Politely declined as usual. Why would I share information with bureaucrats who never protected my ships when pirates attacked? He paused, looking out at the stars. The galaxy is changing. The Assembly had their chance to lead, but they chose politics over protection. Now someone else is showing us what real leadership looks like. Back on Titan, Dr. Crawford made another startling discovery. Deep within the architect facility, he found what appeared to be a message chamber. When activated, it displayed a holographic figure. Tall, graceful, with features that seemed almost familiar. The figure spoke in a language that their translation programs quickly decoded. To whoever finds this message, know that you have been chosen. We are the architects, and we have waited eons for a species worthy of our legacy. You have proven yourselves by reaching beyond the boundaries others accept, by refusing to submit to those who would limit your potential. James felt goosebumps rise on his arms as the message continued. We leave you these gifts not as charity, but as recognition of what you might become. Use them wisely. The galaxy has been stagnant too long under rulers who fear change. Perhaps it is time for new leadership. The hologram faded, leaving James staring at empty air. He realized that humanity hadn't just stumbled upon ancient technology. They had been chosen to inherit it. The architects had been waiting millions of years for a species brave enough to reject the established order and forge their own path. The Assembly's rejection of humanity hadn't just been a mistake. It had been the trigger that unleashed forces beyond their comprehension. Soon the galaxy would discover just how catastrophic their arrogance had been. Fleet Admiral Rachel Torres stood on the bridge of the Prometheus, humanity's first architect-enhanced dreadnought. The massive vessel stretched nearly 2 kilometers from bow to stern, its hull gleaming with energy shields that could deflect the firepower of entire fleets. Around her, dozens of human warships waited in formation at the edge of the outer rim. Territories. Admiral, we're receiving distress signals from the Callow system, reported her communications officer, Lieutenant Commander Paul Harrison. Vorthan raiders have occupied 3 mining colonies and are demanding tribute from the entire sector. Rachel nodded grimly. The Vorthans had grown bolder in recent months, establishing permanent bases in lawless territories and terrorizing anyone who couldn't defend themselves. The Galactic Assembly had issued their usual meaningless condemnations while doing nothing to actually stop the violence. "How many Vorthon ships?" Rachel asked. "Long-range sensors detect 47 vessels, including 3 heavy cruisers," replied her tactical officer, Commander Diana Chen. "They've established a blockade around Kalos Prime." Rachel smiled coldly. The old Earth Navy would have considered such odds impossible. But the Prometheus and her escort fleet carried technology that the Vorthons couldn't even comprehend. "Signal the fleet. We're going in." The human task force jumped to faster-than-light speed using architect drive technology. What should have been a 3-day journey took less than an hour. They emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their arrival sending shockwaves through Vorthon communications channels. "Unknown fleet, identify yourselves," came the harsh demand from the Vorthon admiral. "You are interfering with sovereign military operations." Rachel opened a channel that broadcast to every ship in the system. "This is Fleet Admiral Rachel Torres of the Terran Navy. You have exactly 5 minutes to withdraw from this system and release all prisoners. This is your only warning." Raucous laughter filled the communication channels. "Terrans, the primitives, who crawl on one pathetic world. You dare threaten the Vorthon Empire?" 4 minutes 30 seconds, Rachel replied calmly. The Vorthon fleet moved to engage, confident in their numerical superiority. Their energy weapons opened fire first, bright beams of destruction that had conquered dozens of worlds. The beams struck the Prometheus's shields and simply vanished, absorbed by architect defensive technology. Rachel nodded to Commander Chen. "Show them what humans have learned." The Prometheus fired a single shot from its main cannon. The architect-enhanced weapon released a pulse of energy that passed harmlessly through the Vorthon ship's shields, as if they didn't exist. Instead, it targeted their power cores with surgical precision. Within seconds, the entire Vorthon fleet lost power and drifted helplessly in space. "Impossible," whispered the Vorthon admiral over the open channel. "Our shields, our ships, are obsolete," Rachel finished. "Surrender now and your crews will be treated according to galactic law. Continue to resist and we'll demonstrate weapons you can't imagine." The battle was over in less than 10 minutes. Not a single human ship took damage, while the entire Vorthon raiding fleet was either captured or in full retreat. More importantly, the engagement was witnessed by merchant vessels, mining ships, and long-range sensors throughout the sector. Within hours, recordings of the battle spread across the galactic communication networks. The footage showed impossible things: human shields that made enemy weapons useless, weapons that bypassed defenses entirely, ships that moved faster than anything in known space. Back in the Galactic Assembly chambers, the mood had shifted from concern to outright terror. The emergency sessions were now permanent fixtures as desperate representatives tried to understand what humanity had become. "The Vorthon Empire has formally requested assembly protection," reported Intelligence Director Kethva, his voice shaking slightly. "They claim human weapons violate the Galactic Warfare Conventions." High Chancellor Vextar stared at the tactical display showing the Kalos engagement. "How many Vorthon ships were destroyed?" "None, sir. The humans disabled their entire fleet, without casualties on either side. They then provided medical aid to injured Vorthon crews and released them with a warning not to return." The admission hung in the air like a death sentence. Counselor Threxna's 6 arms trembled as she spoke. They could have annihilated the entire Vorthon fleet, but they chose mercy. This isn't primitive aggression. This is advanced military doctrine. General Korath activated another display showing human fleet movements across the galaxy. "Our latest intelligence suggests Earth now commands over 2,000 combat vessels. Each one appears to use this unknown technology. If they chose to attack assembly worlds..." He didn't need to finish the sentence. Everyone in the chamber understood the implications. The species they had dismissed as violent primitives now possessed the power to conquer the galaxy, yet they used that power to protect the innocent rather than dominate others. Meanwhile, on the colony world of New Haven, Governor Patricia Walsh welcomed an unexpected delegation. 5 alien species that had never spoken to humans before had requested formal meetings to discuss mutual cooperation agreements. The lead delegate was Chancellor Mordan of the Helix Republic, a longtime assembly member whose loyalty had never been questioned. His crystalline features sparkled nervously as he spoke. "Governor Walsh, we have observed humanity's recent activities with great interest. Your protection of trade routes and liberation of oppressed worlds has not gone unnoticed." Patricia nodded diplomatically. "Earth believes in helping those who cannot help themselves." "Indeed. Which brings us to our proposal." Mordan exchanged glances with the other delegates. "The Helix Republic formally requests withdrawal from the Galactic Assembly and the establishment of a mutual defense pact with Earth." Patricia tried to hide her shock. The Helix Republic was one of the Assembly's founding members with a territory spanning 12 star systems. "That's a significant decision, Chancellor. Are you certain?" "Completely certain. The Assembly has had 3,000 years to bring peace and prosperity to the galaxy. In 6 months, humanity has accomplished more than they managed in centuries. We want to be part of that future, not bound to a dying past." Over the following days, similar meetings took place throughout human space. The Altarian Republic, the free colonies of Kepler, the independent mining guilds, all former assembly territories were quietly reaching out to Earth. They offered trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, and formal recognition of human leadership in their sectors. President Morgan reviewed the flood of diplomatic requests from his office on Earth. The holographic displays showed a galaxy in upheaval, with traditional power structures crumbling as world after world turned away from the Assembly. Morgan studied a map showing the rapidly expanding sphere of human influence. "What about the Assembly's response?" "Panic, mostly. They've sent 3 separate diplomatic missions requesting urgent negotiations. Each time their terms become more favorable to us." The president allowed himself a small smile. "Let me guess. They want to discuss Earth's membership in the Assembly again?" "Among other things. The latest offer grants us full voting rights, permanent Security Council membership, and autonomy over our military forces. It's everything Ambassador Kane originally asked for." Morgan shook his head. "Too little, too late. They had their chance to treat us as equals. Now they want to negotiate from a position of weakness." Meanwhile, in his private chambers, High Chancellor Vextar stared at reports that painted an increasingly desperate picture. Half the Assembly's member worlds were either requesting special relationships with Earth or openly discussing withdrawal. Trade revenues were collapsing as merchants preferred human-protected routes. Military commanders reported that their own crews were asking why they couldn't have weapons like the humans possessed. His aide, Assistant Director Plexna, delivered the final devastating news. "Sir, we've lost contact with our deep space monitoring stations. Long-range sensors show massive construction activities throughout human territory. They appear to be building something unprecedented." Vexitar closed his multiple eyes in defeat. The species they had rejected as unworthy was systematically dismantling everything the Assembly had built. Worse still, they were doing it not through conquest or violence, but by simply being better leaders than the Assembly had ever been. The galaxy wasn't just regretting their treatment of humanity. They were abandoning the Assembly entirely to follow Earth's example. The cosmic order that had existed for millennia was collapsing, and there seemed to be nothing anyone could do to stop it. President David Morgan stood before the largest gathering of interstellar leaders in galactic history. The newly constructed Unity Station orbited Earth, its gleaming halls filled with representatives from over 200 worlds. The massive structure had been built using architect technology in just 3 months, a feat that would have taken the Assembly decades to accomplish. "Fellow beings of the galaxy," Morgan began, his voice carried by translation systems to every species present. "Today marks not the end of one era, but the beginning of something greater. The Terran Alliance officially welcomes all worlds that choose cooperation over domination, progress over stagnation." The applause that followed came from beings who had once been enemies, former Assembly members, independent colonies, even reformed pirate clans that had abandoned their violent ways to join humanity's vision of galactic peace. The sound echoed through chambers that represented a new kind of democracy, one built on merit rather than ancient privilege. Ambassador Victoria Kane, now serving as Earth's Director of Galactic Affairs, watched from the observation deck with deep satisfaction. 10 months had passed since she walked out of the assembly chambers, and the galaxy had transformed beyond recognition. "Hard to believe how much has changed," said Thomas Blake, now serving as her deputy. "Remember when they told us no world survives alone in the galaxy?" Victoria smiled. "Turns out they were right. No world can survive alone. That's why 63 former assembly worlds have joined us in the past month alone." Below them, President Morgan continued his address. "The Terran Alliance stands for principles the old order abandoned: protection of the innocent, fair trade for all species, and the right of every world to determine its own destiny. We offer partnership, not subjugation." In the audience, Chancellor Morden of the Helix Republic nodded approvingly. Since withdrawing from the Assembly and joining Earth's alliance, his worlds had prospered beyond their wildest dreams. Human technology had revolutionized their mining operations. Human medical advances had eliminated diseases that plagued his people for centuries, and human military protection had given them security they'd never known. Beside him sat Governor Velnara of the Outer Rim Coalition, whose worlds had been nothing but pirate havens until Earth's intervention. Now they were thriving trade centers, their former raiders retrained as merchant marines and system defense forces. The transformation had been so complete that other worlds pointed to them as examples of what was possible under human guidance. Meanwhile, in the crumbling halls of the old Galactic Assembly, High Chancellor Vextar faced a nearly empty chamber. Of the original 47 member species, only 9 remained. The rest had either joined the Terran Alliance or declared complete independence, choosing isolation over continued association with the failing regime. "The humans have responded to our latest offer," reported Intelligence Director Kethva, his voice hollow with defeat. "They politely declined our invitation to negotiate." Counselor Threxna, her 6 arms hanging limply at her sides, looked up from her seat. "What reason did they give?" "None needed. President Morgan simply stated that Earth is too busy building the future to revisit the failures of the past." The words stung because they were undeniably true. While the Assembly had spent months in desperate debates trying to save their dwindling authority, Earth had been launching the most ambitious programs in galactic history. Massive terraforming projects were turning dead worlds into gardens. Ancient conflicts between species were being resolved through human mediation. Entire sectors that had been lawless wastelands were now peaceful trade routes protected by the Terran Navy. General Korath, the last military commander still loyal to the Assembly, delivered the final blow. "Our remaining fleets have been reduced to escort duty for supply convoys. 3 of our admirals have formally requested transfer to the Terran Navy, citing better opportunities for meaningful service." Vextar closed his eyes in defeat. The species they had dismissed as primitive had not only surpassed them, but had made them irrelevant. The galaxy no longer needed the Assembly. It had found better leadership. Back on Unity Station, President Morgan was concluding his historic address. "The age of distant rulers making decisions for worlds they've never visited is over. The Terran Alliance operates on a simple principle: those who serve, lead. Every member world has an equal voice, and every citizen benefits from our collective strength." The response was thunderous. Species that had been enemies for millennia stood side by side, united by shared prosperity and mutual respect. The camera feeds broadcasting the ceremony reached every corner of the galaxy, showing those still under Assembly rule what they could have if they chose change. Admiral Rachel Torres, now Supreme Commander of Alliance Defense Forces, stood in the military section with officers from dozens of species. Her fleet had grown to over 10,000 vessels, all equipped with architect technology and crewed by beings who believed in protecting rather than conquering. "Ma'am," whispered her aide, "we're receiving surrender requests from the last Assembly battle groups. They want to join our fleet." Rachel nodded. It was inevitable. No military force could compete with ships that used technology millions of years advanced. But more importantly, no soldier wanted to serve a cause that had become morally bankrupt. As the ceremony concluded, beings from across the galaxy began signing the Alliance Charter. Each signature represented not just political change, but a fundamental shift in how galactic civilization operated. The document enshrined principles that the Assembly had paid lip service to but never implemented: equal representation, protection of the innocent, technological sharing for the common good, and peaceful resolution of conflicts. Dr. James Crawford, still working with Architect Technology on Titan, watched the broadcast with his research team. They had recently discovered additional Architect sites throughout the galaxy, each one revealing new technologies that would benefit all Alliance members. "The Architects would be proud," said Dr. Nina Patel. "They left these gifts for a species that would use them to unite rather than divide." James nodded, studying the holographic message they had discovered just days earlier. The Architects had foreseen this moment, predicting that eventually a species would emerge that rejected the established order's limitations and forge a better path. They had been waiting millions of years for humanity to find their legacy and use it wisely. 6 months later, the transformation was complete. The Galactic Assembly officially dissolved when its last 5 member worlds voted to join the Terran Alliance. Thextar himself had requested asylum on Earth, where he now served as a historical advisor, helping younger species understand the mistakes that had led to the old order's collapse. President Morgan stood in his office, now relocated to Unity Station, looking out at the bustling traffic of Alliance vessels. Ships from hundreds of worlds moved in perfect harmony, their crews working together toward common goals. The site represented everything the Assembly had claimed to achieve but never had: true galactic unity. Victoria Kane joined him at the PO observation window, carrying reports from across Alliance space. "The Outer Rim territories are officially declared pirate-free. The last raider clans have either joined the Alliance or fled to unexplored regions. And the Assembly holdouts?